It's exciting to be here. Thanks for coming out too. Post-holiday weekend, kicking off the week on a Tuesday morning here is pretty awesome. Shout out to Matt and all the folks sponsoring and helping organize this and come out. And we're excited for the next 30 minutes. There are no slides. Okay, we're gonna have open conversation, talking about use cases. Nancy has a fantastic journey she can share with you too in terms of where she's been, where they're at, where they're striving to head towards. They're a fantastic partner with us. And we'll leave some time for Q&A too. So if you have some questions that might be relevant, whether it's your journey today or where you're hoping to go through or sparking interest, or sometimes too, you're in a business and you're getting friction with what you want to do and where you want to go. And there's not a lot of stakeholders. And I think we learned a lot just barely with that session too around the infrastructure and the foundational layers and how important it is to help support that transformation. None of that necessarily means it's easy. And we're going to talk through that a little bit more today too. So Nancy, do you mind introducing yourself? And then I can kick off.
Yes, I am Nancy Orgill. I am the Director of Customer Experience at KUHL Clothing. I've actually been there for 4 years, going on 5 years in June. And my previous life, I was in the airlines for 16 years. So coming from airlines to retail, what a change.
Okay, so you've seen your fair share of escalations, right? Especially when you talk about travel, hospitality, airlines. And, when it comes to AI right now, I think a lot of people feel, various mixed feelings towards it. Some people in this room could be through the roof excited. Other people might be a little nervous. Other people might hate it. I've talked to several people who are just like, I hate all things AI, or I don't use it for XYZ purposes. And wherever you're at on that journey or on that paradigm, that's okay. I think the big thing we're trying to come into this room and have a conversation today is practical application, but also learning that every brand, every company that we're working for or with or partnering with does operate differently. It's not necessarily always a one-size-fits-all type situation. So Christmas just happened. Who here either received a gift or gave a gift that somebody wasn't super stoked about because it either didn't fit or maybe needed to be returned or was the wrong item? I have 4 boys. All of them at one point or another were like, Dad, this didn't really work out. So what's next after that? When you have an issue or a situation like that come up, how many of you pick up the phone and call customer support as of right now?
Or should we say how many dread calling customer support?
Yes. Well, based on some of the reactions here was like the dread piece for sure, Nancy. Totally agree with that. But very few people are like, yes, I'm going to pick up the phone. You're usually going to a couple other different outlets: chat, text, phone, maybe as more of a last resort, SMS, social media, email, right? Like there's a lot of things, and then maybe voice, depending on your responses and what that experience looks like. So it's kind of fitting. I went through a return experience over the weekend with a very prominent brand, and I asked for a live agent how many times before I actually got a live agent? Any thoughts, ideas? 2, 3, 4 in the back. 5, I love that question. 7, it was 6. I'm not playing on the words, but it was 6. And I know, I love the billboards, everything out there right now. 6 times where I says, please take me to a live agent. Please take me to a live rep. 2 of those times I got asked, how satisfied are you with your experience? I'm like, that's still happening. I want help. I want support. And that's a really good use case and example where AI is powerful. And yes, it is meant to help support friction moments, but where it can fall short and where it can fail is based on the experience not driving forward towards loyalty, towards devotion, towards building on something that you've worked so hard to obtain in that transaction and that customer. And so those were really good examples over the weekend for me of deflection and prioritizing containment instead of, we want you, we care about you, let's drive towards devotion. And we want to have that empathy, that trust, that friction supporting what happens next through a live, real person, okay? And so what I wanted to chat with Nancy about today is a couple different use cases. And I think it might be helpful to share a little bit about your journey with AI at KUHL to start and maybe set the stage for them around it not always being overly easy. And I preface this because I think your website, there's a certain part we talked about last week that says challenge everything. Is that right?
Yes, we
Okay,
do say
so
that.
that's some helpful context here to preface on kind of what you've went through to get to where you're at today.
So about a year ago, I was approached, and I love our partnership with Gladly. And the question was, have you considered AI? And I don't know about you guys, but there's like this immediate fear that overtakes you. And you're like, what? Why? Like, why would I even consider that? And so it's an interesting concept. And as I thought about it, I had to get people to buy in at my company, because the number one thing that I was always told, we still answer phones. We still are available on multiple channels. There always has to be a human on the other side. So how in the world am I going to convince my executives to bring in AI when they always expect a human to be on the other side? So when we first started with Gladly, we picked 3 use cases, and it was based off of reports and metrics. And we picked, how do I make a return? Where's my order? And can I cancel or modify my order? Pretty basic, your basic questions. And I thought, why is my team constantly answering this question? How do I make a return? Does our website not look great? Do we not have a good FAQ page? But I don't think people take the time nowadays to actually search for that information. They just want to connect with somebody. So we actually went into this scenario with 3, I will get to this later, but man, the changes that have happened. So it was very, very basic. And we had great answers. We knew what we were going to say. And all of a sudden, we started seeing the numbers change. And AI was actually handling almost 50% of those questions, just from us putting in a simple answer that really just drove in the policy, what was happening, and it never came to one of my agents. Give you a little bit more background about my team. My customer service team can anywhere be between 6 to 8 agents. It's at 8 during holiday season, but then we kind of downsize a little bit. So there was an opportunity here to have a little bit of an assist. But again, it wasn't about me taking that team from 8 to 4, because I knew somebody had to be on the other end. And we learned that through this whole process, that having somebody, when you get it 6 times, I want to speak to an agent, we don't do that. One thing that I have truly, truly appreciated about Gladly is they understand where we're coming from. We have to have a human on the other side. But can technology help gather the information so that my team doesn't have to spend so much time helping them? Absolutely. And I think that's the biggest thing is, I promise you, if you were to chat or text us and said you needed a representative, that is being transferred to a human. So they are there, it does a summary, and it really helps bring that technology so that it is a better overall customer experience. So it's been interesting. I was telling Jason last week, we actually did a reflection. I was on with somebody from Gladly, and we looked at where we have come from to where we are today. You guys, I love my answers. We work so hard on the content. But now seeing what AI is doing and how it's personalizing, it is very hard to tell if you're not speaking to one of my agents or if you're speaking to AI. It's been very fun.
I like that. That was potentially going to be a little trivia play, was real or not, in terms of, human or not. I think this came up too, like the almost like the agent twin, which I think John and team talked about a little bit earlier too, and that's something that a lot of companies strive for. And so walk me through, what has that done for your team when it comes down to, hey, I'm now an expert focusing on more expert things. I think part of this too, we're talking about AI, but how does that then in return help take care of or help the employees when you're talking about just their overall well-being, their livelihood, what they're excited about? Because there's also like, oh, not this again, or not that again, or like I've answered 50 questions that are so easy. Mm-hmm. Is that really the best use of their time? But I'd love to hear just more in terms of how that's fundamentally helped your overall team.
I mean, I know my team is always excited to be on how do I make a return line for 50 questions a day. But removing that, it actually opened up an opportunity. And this is where I get very excited because our conversation started to change. It wasn't the basic questions. And what I noticed more and more as I was watching my team and listening to calls and interactions, watching the conversations, they were talking more about our product. And looking at that, we have actually had to kind of change the way that we've started to train if you are to join our team, because we need to get you product knowledge. You can learn a system, but people are wanting to know your product. And that was the fun part, is we saw this transition organically happening because we were taking the low-hanging fruit questions and removing that from the day-to-day, that they were actually having honest conversations, not just getting to know where the customer is traveling to, what they need the clothing for, but then knowing the product so well that they could be like, I would recommend the Radical pant, or I would recommend the Dillinger. And so they were having these conversations, which when the numbers came out, you guys, my team was starting to sell. They weren't just a customer service team anymore. They were trying to communicate better about our product than they were about our return policy.
And that's translated to, I think, revenue per call, give or take, last year is up over
120%.
Which is fantastic. And that's an exciting part of the business. And if you're on the other side of that conversation and you're a customer that's having that type of engaging conversation about products, and there is that level of, I know these, I've seen them or I've used them, or like, half my wardrobe, is like this. It's really, really meaningful, and it goes a long ways. How does the handoff experience work? Because I know sometimes people are worried about, hey, I've now engaged in chat, or I'm engaged on SMS. When I then go to a live agent, can you share a little bit more around how they've been able to take that experience and make it seamless? Because I know sometimes people, you've seen even in the airlines industry, it's name, age, loyalty number, booking reference number, great address. Okay, here's a PIN code we're sending you, and you've done that 2 or 3 different times. And you're like, what's happening? I'm the same person. I'm the same customer. I haven't changed. I've been on the phone the whole time. I'd love to hear a little bit more how KUHL handles that.
Yeah, it's been exciting. This is where I go to that big change that I was talking about from a year ago. We had these structures that we followed and we had great answers, but as we've continued to evolve, the system is actually picking up on little cues. And it's been fun to see how we've been able to kind of train you guys. I'm not going to lie, she's a part of our team. She's actually named. Her name is Raina. And the team knows about her, and they know to shout out when she's not behaving and when she does a good job. And so she will basically go in, and now and I will go back to Jason's reference of a gift return, because I was just watching a conversation the other day. And this was something that we were working on, because I truly thought, does a gift return inquiry, and I promise you guys, our process is very manual on the internal side, but do I actually have to have an agent handling that? And so we dove into gift returns, and we kind of said, this is what we need. This is how we want it to be presented. And our AI is running through that entire process to the point that it will create a task for one of my agents to handle the internal side. But that customer doesn't know that they were speaking to AI the whole time, because A, they're addressed by name. B, it's calling out the product that they purchased and their order number. And it's asking the right questions to gain that information to hand it off. Now, if something was to deviate and they were like, hey, I need help with this, it automatically transfers to a human. But we are preparing it to go through the whole process. And it was funny, I actually had a comment from one of my team members yesterday. She actually teams me and she said, hey, I just wanted to give kudos to Raina. She's done a fantastic job. She gave me all the information I needed to quickly take care of the customer. And she sent that email off, and that person never spoke to my team member. She only talked to our AI. And so it's been fun to see the transition from where it was just the basic information to now seeing a true experience happening. It's not just your black and white. There's more color to it. And I promise you guys have to train it. You guys have to be just on top of it as you are with your team members. but it's amazing the results that come out of it.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's not just a set it and forget it. I think that's something that a lot of brands will be like, hey, we've got it up and running. Here we go. And I think that's where there's quite a few right now who are almost pulling back on what's been deployed, or they've got 10 other different AI initiatives happening in once, trying to solve different problems and different initiatives. And it's those lines are getting crossed very, very fast, and or data is clunky and tough to report on and articulate how they're attributing towards all the metrics you really, really care about, whether that's WSMO reduction. Hey, what's my AHT look like? WSMR is another one right now that's really, really big and popular. But I think the other thing too that's fascinating is through implementing Gladly and activating on a bunch of other channels. One thing I think is important is your voice talk time didn't decrease.
No.
It increased, which you were excited about. And I think
Yes.
a lot of brands sometimes are running away from that. So you could share a little bit more around that inflection point, and then we'll wind down and have some Q&A.
I mean, honestly, when you reach out and you're asking a basic policy question, it's pretty quick to respond. So that conversation isn't going to be long. But what we did notice, and I think it's just my history of being in the customer service industry. You hear about average handle time. And if that number goes up, you just have that sheer panic set in. You're like, oh my goodness, what is happening? And we looked at it, and when we heard the conversations and what was happening, it wasn't a detriment. It was actually a really good thing, because the reason it was increasing is because the agents were having time to ask the right questions. They were having the right conversations and talking about the product, which did increase the sales. But I will say it was a strange phenomenon to see your average handle time go up and your conversation time go up, because you are still using a tool that's supposed to help in that area. But in our world, we wanted that. We wanted more conversations for the right things. And that is where we are at today. And you walk into that room, yes, we are all on site. We're not remote. And the conversations that are being said and heard are all positive, connecting with that customer one-on-one and selling our product.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think it's something that's fascinating. We work with a lot of the world's largest brands, and we work with a lot of emerging brands too, across that entire spectrum. You've got 5 retail locations, soon to be 6. Is that public knowledge yet or not?
Yes.
Okay. Austin is number 6, which is exciting. And I think one thing that stands out in these conversations that we have is give yourselves a high bar. Like, it is okay to challenge the status quo. I think a lot of conversations that I'm in, we would really love if CSAT could be, there's depending on percentage-based Likert scale, 5-point, where it's like, hey, 90%, or maybe it's I want a 4.5 average CSAT. Some of the other brands are really engaged, like, no, we want 4.8, or no, we want over 90%. We want to impact or influence these metrics for these reasons, but a lot of these are all predicated on, are we removing friction points that our people don't need to be involved with today? Is it giving us an overall better experience that matches our brand and what we want to stand for and represent? Part of this is the ethos, the culture, who we've always stood for. There's a slippery slope on where you go depending on what type of compromises you're willing or not willing to make. That's also really, really critical. And then I think when you're looking at your journey, it's not a one day only, here we go, let's figure it out. It's a team effort, executive sponsorships down and up to ensure that you're aligned and motivated and inspired, but also embracing it as a team. And so anything else you'd like to add, or tips or recommendations just in terms of getting started or evaluating your journey before we move to some questions?
I'll be honest, if you guys are on the fence, I was in your spot a year ago. And where it started from, it worked for us, but it's gotten so much better. And so if you are still questioning, is AI for us? You guys, now is the time. It is amazing the changes that are coming about, and you don't want to be running behind trying to catch up. I think that was my driving point when I was talking to my leaders, is I don't want to be the one running to third as everybody's running to first. I want to get on board. I want to make this happen for us, and I want it to be our way, not somebody else's way. And that's where we've truly lucked out with our partnership with Gladly, that we have made it our way.
Love that. Thank you. Matt, are we good for a few questions? Easy. Love it. Cool. Anything from the audience that's top of mind or? Yeah.
People getting upset about interacting with AI at all? Because, I mean, as a consumer, I just want my problem solved. So, I don't know, I'm curious.
We do, and so we're on different channels with AI. It's mainly voice that we actually see the response of, I want an agent, stop answering this. And so voice has been a tricky one to navigate, but for chat and SMS, we haven't really seen it unless, like I said, something was said incorrectly, but just like my agents, they could have said something incorrectly and upset a customer too. So that's usually the time that we have to focus on what content we have behind the scenes.
And there's definitely settings to that too, right? Like, how do I want to structure it? How do I want to design it when it comes to true empathy or making judgment calls? Do you want to have that ratcheted so far up where like it's going to default to go to a human and route that accordingly? So depending on use cases and situations and what the context is and how that conversation's tracking, then also if you called in, one thing that's fascinating too is we can pull customer details and look at, okay, LTV, how long have you been a customer? What's other types of metadata fields that might be really compelling or useful to go, oh, okay, yeah, Matt is somebody that we are going to treat a little differently. Or Matt is somebody who complains every time he reaches out. So we're also going to handle that a little differently, right? So yeah, there's some different use cases.
And I would say on that too, when we first started out, I was like, nobody needs to know that it's AI. And so we did a very seamless transition, but I will say as it grows, we have had to add the little catch of like, it is Cool's virtual assistant because people are so used to it nowadays. But we did play the game for a while of like, nope, it's going to hand off. And it did. But now people are catching on. The AI is more around.
Thank you for that. Any others? Yes.
What's the training process look like?
So training for the AI?
Yeah, what did that process look like for your like internal guidelines and branding and everything? Like, do you feel like that was pretty seamless, or was that kind of a long process?
It was pretty seamless in the sense of once you get your foundation set with your team and they know the baselines of the guidelines and that, it's just double checking the information. And yeah, that might take 1 or 2 more seconds just to kind of scroll up, see what was said, but it's just teaching a different way of having that transition happen. And right now, something that is very cool is the summarizations that we're getting. And so we rarely are scrolling up now because it's like, hey, this is what I said. This is where we're at. Now it's your turn.
I'd say there's probably 5 to 10 really, really compelling and standardized use cases across most industries or adjacent verticals where if we program those for the right ways and the right use cases and pull from your FAQs or your library, we can account for probably 70 to 80% of volume, depending on where you want to activate that channel. And then a lot of it just comes down to, is this the way you want it to be for your story, for your customers, which you've highlighted, that's really crucial. Yeah, in the back.
So I mean, for your voice AI agent, can you handle all the questions from customer request, or eventually you transfer to the human side?
So we do have it set up right now to handle information that we have in the system. So it can handle most requests, but it will have to hand off because we have come across some instances where we'd rather have a human interact with that. So we have designed it to pass off to a human.
There's a really cool use case. We have a brand that's rolling out more of their business operations in Australia, and they wanted a different accent, a different voice, a different background to support customers in Australia. And so part of that was, hey, we want a different type of latency. We want different types of background noise. We want a different type of accent. So you can get really dialed with how you want voice to, overall be handled and to have it be structured. But also it's a big learning curve. A lot of brands, I think, are still really risk averse towards voice. You have a lot of early adopters, but I think over the last 6 to 9 months, as we've been rolling this out and deploying it, having cool learnings, it's getting sneaky good.
It is.
And so there's examples we can give you today if you're interested. So even like stop by, chat with me or Doug. We can pull up really any website from an e-commerce standpoint really quickly and be like, hey, let's deploy chat here and show you what it looks like. We can give you different numbers to call or voice or customers that are live today so you can see and get a little bit of an idea of what that looks like. But yeah, I'd say voice is evolving really fast, but it's still got its nuances that are, I think, going to be solved for sooner than later, but it's not 100% everyone's pumped and excited about voice yet.
I mean, if we can bring the challenge of how we spell our product and our even name, gladly accepted the challenge.
It did. Lots of challenges on that front.
Well, I'll let you.
There is. And so it's funny, a lot of the time before, just until recently, we were actually typing in COOL, so it would say the right name.
My kids still call it KUHL because they think it's fun to pronounce it that way. So I told them I was chatting with KUHL today and they were excited. But we got one more, Matt? Anyone else? And if not, that's okay. Yeah, go for it.
Is the future going to get so good that it could recognize that you had a return last month, you're coming back to shop for more, it knows your style, or anything?
Do you want me to take that? I love that question. I think the barrier there is going to come down to unique qualifiers and identification around how and when we can know that. If you, for example, you're logged in and you're a loyalty member, and we know you are coming back, absolutely yeses to that question. I mean, we're seeing some brands today doing that really, really well. I think the other outlier is, how can we know who you are and do that in a way that isn't violating certain policies and terms and conditions and stuff that we have structured or set out? Because all things AI related, we also work significantly with large retailers, and there's a lot of conversations with all things legal and InfoSec and making sure we're compliant in all the right ways and all the right 4-letter words, domestically and internationally. But I will say that we're seeing massive strides there, and that serves up a phenomenal customer experience. That's the ideal use case. You land on the page and we know where you've been, how often you've shopped, and that's not even getting into potential marketplaces and other things like that that exist today where they might go, hey, Johnny's done A, B, C, D, E, F, but now he's looking for something totally different. Differently doesn't work there. And let's see how we can best serve up something that's crazy compelling. But there's tentacles of this, like we've seen with the search engine too, right? Like there's so many variables and nuances of how you can serve up something that's compelling, exciting, top of mind, that's relevant to you. And I think that's a phenomenal, stage and era that we're in today versus what we saw even 5 years ago. It's transforming really fast. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you.